In this lesson, we're going to talk about some simple terminology and concepts like using variables and algebraic symbols. So hopefully by this lesson you should be able to identify the difference between a variable and a constant, and then identify different algebraic symbols such as operation symbols, inequality, equality symbols, grouping symbols, and things of that nature. So the first thing is, what is a variable? Well, a variable is a letter which represents a number whose value can change. So if we have something like 3x, x is known as the variable because we could plug anything in for x. X's value could equal 0, it could equal 1, it could equal any other number we could think of, okay? So again, a variable is just a symbol or a letter which represents a number which can change. So then the opposite of a variable then is a constant. And a constant is a number whose value always stays the same. So in that same example of 3x, no matter what we change x to, like I said, x could be 0, 1, 2, 3, 10, 100, a million. No matter what we change x to, 3 will always remain the same. So that's the difference between a variable, something that can vary or change, and a constant, something that is always the same. After that, now we're going to talk about some simple operation symbols, and this is stuff that you guys have touched on since first, second, third, fourth grade, things like that. So first one is addition. We all know what the addition sign looks like, just simply like that. So if you have 1 plus 3 equals 4. So we all know what the addition sign looks like. The next one is the subtraction sign. Again, similar. 3 minus 1, 2. We all know what the subtraction sign is. Next one is multiplication, which can take many different forms. So the one that we're most familiar with is the x in the middle. So 3 times 2 is equal to 6. But multiplication can look many other ways too. So you can also use just a little dot, which you may have seen me use in past videos. So 3 times 2 is 6. That dot also represents multiplication. It's just something that's easier and quicker to signify multiplication. Another way that we can signify multiplication is just having two numbers or two constants, two variables just standing next to each other. So if you see 3x, well, that means it's 3 times x. Because they're right next to each other, we just know that that means multiplication. And then the last way of doing it, say you have two constants. I mean, you're not going to write 3 times 2 as simply that because that looks like 32. So instead, how we write constants written next to each other is with these what we call parentheses, and we'll get into those a little bit later in this lesson. But again, because they're standing right next to each other, it means multiplication. And then the last one is division. Again, we're all familiar with the division sign like that. So 6 divided by 2 is equal to 3. But again, like multiplication, division can be represented several other ways. You can see it as 6 divided by 2 is equal to 3. More proper way is 6 on top of 2 is equal to 3. And then even for some other practices, we might have 6 divided by 2. And again, that's something we'll get into later. But the most common way that you'll see it is in these two manners, but again, it can be shown in several other ways. So those are just the different operation symbols that we use throughout algebra. The next one is inequality or equality symbols. So again, like you see me writing right back here, 3 plus 1 equals 4. This equal sign means that whatever you have on the left is the exact same as whatever you have on the right, and vice versa. What you have on the right is the same as on the left. That is just the equal symbol. Again, something we've worked on forever. Another one is not equal. Again, very simple, and it seems like, oh, when would we ever use something like that? Well, it'll show up in certain areas in algebra. So just simply, excuse me, that's a false statement. Say you have 3 plus 1 does not equal 5, or 3 plus 1 is not equal to 5. Again, just the not equal symbol, just putting it right down the middle. The less than or greater than symbol. So say we have 3 is greater than 1. That's a true statement, or it can be written as 1 is less than 3. Okay. Again, nothing too complicated, things that you've probably seen in the past before. This last one, less than or equal to. Something you may or may not be familiar with, but let's look at, say, 3 is greater than or equal to 1. That's a true statement. However, you could also write 3 is greater than or equal to 3. Again, it's just kind of grouping together both the greater than or equal to symbol at the same time. Similarly, you could say 1 is less than or equal to 3. 1 is less than or equal to 1. So that is the less than or greater than symbol. The next thing we're going to talk about is grouping symbols, which is parentheses. So like I mentioned earlier, parentheses, it's the same thing as what you would use in writing in English class. It's just putting parentheses around something, and so that could be used for if you're saying 3 times 2, just parentheses. The next one, now we'll use parentheses if we're trying to group some numbers, but say you're trying to group numbers inside of numbers, then we will use brackets, which are like that, which is just a way of further grouping things. So say you want 3 times 2, then you want to say plus 1 plus 4, something like that. You're using these brackets to group together all these numbers before you do that last operation. And then the last one is braces. Again, this is just another grouping symbol. Say you wanted to group something inside something else, you could use these braces. And then braces will also be used in other forms of algebra and higher levels of math, but we won't get into those right now. But for now, we're just going to treat it as another grouping symbol. And then the last thing is exponential notation. Okay, so say we, run into a situation where we're saying 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 times 2. Now, we could just write all that out, or we could also just say 2 raised to the 5th. Again, it's 2 multiplied by itself 5 times, like you see here. If you have 3 times 3, well, that's 3 to the second, also known as 3 squared, and you'll see why that is later on. Or 7 times 7 times 7 is what we call 7 cubed. Again, cubed is when we say something raised to the third, and again, we'll explain why that is later. So while we have special names for 3 squared and 7 cubed when we square and cube things, anything after that is just as simple as saying 4 raised to the 4th, which is equal 4 times 4 times 4 times 4. So again, this is just exponential notation. When you take a single number and multiply it by itself multiple times, you can just simply write as that number raised to however many times you're multiplying it.